As Ada stepped outside with her stunning new look, the village fell silent. Her glowing skin and graceful figure drew every gaze her way. A man carrying a bowl of soup stopped mid-sip, spilling it on himself in shock, while another, distracted by her beauty, walked straight into a tree, rubbing his head in embarrassment. Ada held her head high, her steps confident, fully aware of the stir she caused, savoring each amazed and admiring look around her. How did this magical transformation happen? Sit back and enjoy this magical tale of Ada's transformation. In the heart of the rolling hills of Omago, a small, dusty village nestled beneath the wide African sky, lived a poor farmer named Musa. He was a tall man who worked so hard. But despite his hard work, the crops barely grew, and his family struggled to make ends meet. Musa's days were spent from sunrise to sunset in the fields, bending over the dry soil, coaxing it to give life. His wife, Ada, was never satisfied with his efforts. She often stood at the door of their small mud house, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed with disappointment. "Look at you, Musa," Ada would say, her voice sharp, as she watched him walk in after a long day's work. "Sweating and slaving all day, and for what? We have nothing. No new clothes, no proper food. I should have married a man with wealth and sense, not a poor farmer who can't even feed his family." Their twin sons, Aze and Ikenna, both mischievous boys with quick grins and sharper tongues, had begun to mimic their mother's words. They giggled as they watched their father fumble with his worn tools, his tired face etched with frustration. "Look at father, the poor farmer," Eyes would tease. "Maybe he'll grow gold from the dirt tomorrow." Kenna added, laughing. Musa kept silent, his heart heavy. His love for his family was deep, but their mocking words stung like thorns. Ada was never content. "I should be living like a queen," Ada murmured to herself one afternoon, her eyes following the men of the village who passed by with fine robes and jewelry for their wives. "I should have married a rich man, not a man who barely grows enough to feed us." Her thoughts of grandeur were never far from her lips, and the twins had grown up listening to her complaints. Aze and Ikenna had come to believe that their father was the source of their problems. Musa looked at his sons with sad eyes. "I do my best," he said quietly. "But it is not always easy. The land is dry, and the rains come late." But the twins weren't listening. They were too busy dreaming of the easy wealth and luxury their mother often spoke about. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the village and Musa walked the long path back from his fields, he came across an old man sitting beneath a large baobab tree. The man had a wrinkled face, and his clothes were tattered, but his eyes sparkled with an otherworldly light. "Good evening, Musa," the old man said in a voice that seemed to echo with the wind. Musa stopped, surprised that the old man knew his name. "Good evening, elder. How do you know me?" he asked, a mix of curiosity and caution in his tone. The old man smiled gently. "I know many things, my son. I have watched you work, day in and day out, struggling with your crops, with your family's unhappiness. You are a good man, but life has not been kind to you. I am here to offer you something, Musa," the old man continued. 7 wishes to change your life as you see fit." Musa's eyes widened in disbelief. 7 wishes? Anything I want?" "Anything," the old man said. "But use them wisely. The power of wishes can be tricky. They can bring both joy and sorrow, depending on how you use them." Musa hesitated, unsure if he should believe the old man. But the thought of changing his life, of giving his family the happiness they longed for, was too tempting. He agreed. "Very well. "Elder, I will accept your gift." The old man nodded and disappeared into the night, leaving Musa standing under the baobab tree with the weight of 7 wishes resting on his shoulders. Musa hurried home, his heart pounding with excitement. He burst through the door, eager to tell Ada the news. "Ada, Ada, you will not believe what happened today," Musa said, breathless. "An old man gave me 7 wishes. We can finally change our lives." Ada, who had been sitting by the fire, stood up, her eyes wide. 7 wishes, she repeated, her mind already racing with ideas. "Anything we want." "Anything," Musa confirmed, smiling at the thought of finally making his family happy. But instead of planning carefully, Ada's excitement got the better of her. "I want to see if it's real. Musa, make my belly grow. I want to laugh at something silly for once." Musa hesitated. "But Ada, we should think about these wishes." "Do it now," Ada demanded, her impatience rising. Reluctantly, Musa used the first wish. "I wish for Ada's belly to grow large." In an instant, Ada's stomach swelled, making her look like she had eaten 100 meals. She burst into laughter, holding her stomach as she looked at her new figure. "See, it works," she exclaimed. But her laughter soon turned to discomfort. "Ah, it's too heavy, Musa. I don't want it any more." With a sigh, Musa had no choice but to use the second wish. "I wish for Ada's belly to return to normal." The magic worked again, but now 2 wishes were gone, and nothing had changed for the better. The next day, as the family went about their usual routine, the twins, Ez and Ikenna, played outside. They were always full of energy, running through the fields and climbing trees. But while climbing one of the tall mango trees, Ikenna slipped and fell hard to the ground, hitting his head. Musa ran to his son, his heart in his throat. Ikenna lay unconscious, and Musa could feel the panic rising in his chest. "Ada, it's Ikenna," Musa shouted, crowding his son in his arms. Ada rushed out, her face pale with fear. "We have no money for a healer, Musa. What are we going to do?" Ada cried, tears streaming down her face. Without thinking, Musa used his third wish. "I wish for Ikenna to be healed." In the blink of an eye, Ikenna stirred and opened his eyes, confused but unharmed. Ada hugged her son tightly, but her relief quickly turned to anger. "You've wasted another wish, Musa," she yelled, her face twisted with fury. "That's 3 gone now. How will we ever escape this life of poverty?" Musa, though relieved his son was safe, felt a growing sense of dread. 3 wishes were gone, and their life was no better than before. Despite Ikenna's recovery, Ada remained furious. She couldn't let go of her dreams of wealth and beauty. Her frustration grew with every passing day, and one afternoon she confronted Musa again. "Musa, if you won't use these wishes properly, I will. I want to be the most beautiful and curvaceous woman in the village," Ada demanded. Musa tried to reason with her. "Ada, beauty won't fill our stomachs or help the farm grow." But Ada wouldn't listen. "You've wasted enough already. Do this for me." Reluctantly, Musa gave in to her demands. "I wish for Ada to be the most beautiful and curvaceous woman in the village." In an instant, Ada's appearance transformed. She stood taller, her figure more striking than ever before. Her skin glowed, and her features seemed to capture everyone's attention. Ada, now proud and confident, immediately began parading herself around the village. As Ada stepped outside with her transformed, mesmerizing appearance, the entire village took notice. Her skin glowed in the sunlight, and her figure seemed almost ethereal. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and even the usual village buzz fell silent. One man, who'd been balancing a basket of yams, was so caught off guard that he tripped over a rock, sending the basket tumbling. Another villager, carrying a bowl of soup, was mid-sip when he glanced over at Ada, and in his shock missed his mouth, spilling soup down his front. A young man walking down the path found his gaze glued to her so intently that he walked straight into a tree, rubbing his head in embarrassment as nearby women hid giggles behind their hands. Women exchanged glances, some with admiration, others with envy, while the men couldn't tear their eyes away. Ada walked with a newfound pride, relishing each wide-eyed stare, fully aware of the stir she was causing with every graceful step. Wherever she went, men and women alike stopped to admire her. But rather than finding happiness, Ada's new appearance only fed her vanity, and the village began to whisper about her sudden change. Some women whispered behind her back, while others avoided her altogether. The men stared, and Ada basked in the attention, feeding her growing ego. Meanwhile, Aes and Ikenna, thrilled by their mother's transformation, became even more mischievous. They began bragging to the other children about how their father had the power to grant wishes. The twins' behavior worsened, and they got into trouble wherever they went. They teased other children, stole fruits from nearby farms, and disrespected the village elders. Days turned into weeks, and Musa's frustration grew. Ada was no longer the woman he had married. She spent all her time preening in front of the mirror, completely obsessed with her appearance. Aes and Ikenna were running wild, no longer listening to their father. One evening, as the family sat for dinner, Musa couldn't hold back his anger any longer. "This is not the life I wanted for us," he shouted. "We had 7 wishes, and we've wasted almost all of them on foolish things." Ada scoffed. "Foolish? You call my beauty foolish? You've never known what it's like to be admired, Musa. And what good has it done us, Ada?" Musa snapped back. "The crops are still failing, our sons are misbehaving, and we are no better off than before." In the heat of the argument, Musa's anger got the best of him. "I wish for silence in this house," he shouted. In a flash, the magic worked. Ada and Ikenna, who had been arguing with their father, fell completely silent. They tried to speak, but no words came out. Musa stood frozen in shock, realizing what he had done. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. Ada sat glaring at Musa, her mouth opening and closing in frustration, but no sound escaped. Ikenna, too, tried to protest but was left mute. At first, Musa was relieved by the peace, but as the evening wore on, guilt began to gnaw at him. He looked at his wife and son, their eyes pleading with him to undo the magic. He knew he had to fix it. Despite all of Ada's flaws and the twins' mischief, they were still his family. And now he only had one wish left. With a deep sigh, Musa finally stood and spoke softly. "I wish for Ada and Ikenna to speak again." The magic worked once more, and their voices returned. Ada immediately started yelling at Musa, but her anger quickly subsided when she saw the look on his face. For the first time, Ada realized how much strain this had put on Musa. The silence in the house had been a wake-up call. The next day, as Ada walked through the village, she noticed something strange. The villagers who once stopped to admire her were now whispering behind her back. Some were even laughing. At first, Ada thought nothing of it, but as she caught her reflection in a pool of water, her heart sank. Her magical beauty had faded. She was back to her original self. Mortified, Ada rushed home, tears stinging her eyes. She had built her confidence around her new appearance, and now, without it, she felt humiliated and exposed. The villagers had noticed the change, and they began to gossip about how quickly her beauty had disappeared. Ada sat by the fire, hiding her face in her hands. "What have I done, Musa?" she whispered. "I was so foolish. All I wanted was to be admired, but now I see that none of it mattered." Musa, though still frustrated by the lost wishes, sat beside her. "We've both made mistakes, Ada," he said softly. "But it's not too late to fix things. We may not have any wishes left, but we still have each other." Ada nodded, realizing that she had been chasing after the wrong things all along. The magic had given her temporary beauty, but it had also taken away the love and respect she once had for Musa and her family. As Musa and Ada sat in silence that evening, a familiar presence appeared. The old man who had granted the 7 wishes stood at their doorway, his face filled with quiet disappointment. "You have squandered the gifts I gave you," the spirit said softly. Musa hung his head. "I know. I let my emotions guide my decisions. I thought the wishes would make our lives easier, but they only made things worse." Ada, too, looked at the spirit with shame. She had been the one to push Musa into using the wishes recklessly, blinded by her desire for beauty and admiration. The spirit stepped forward. "Wishes are powerful, but they are not the answer to life's challenges. They cannot replace wisdom, patience, or hard work." "You still have your strength, Musa," the spirit continued. "You still have your family. Use these, not magic, to rebuild your life. The true magic lies in your own hands and heart." With those words, the spirit faded into the night, leaving Musa and Ada to face the reality of what they had done. The next morning, Musa rose before dawn as usual, but something was different. The weight of the wishes was gone, and in its place, a renewed sense of purpose filled his heart. He had no more magic to rely on, but he did have his hands, his land, and his family. Ada, still reflecting on her behavior, quietly joined him at the table. For the first time in a long while, there was no anger between them. Ada felt humbled by the events, and realized that her obsession with beauty had only driven a wedge between her and her family. That day, Musa went back to the fields with renewed energy. Aes and Ikena, who had been avoiding their father out of shame for their recent mischief, finally approached him. "Father," Aes said, his voice small, "we want to help." Musa smiled at his sons, the tension between them easing. "There's always work to be done," he said. "Let's get to it." And so, for the first time, the entire family worked together. Ada helped around the house and in the fields, while Aes and Ikena learned how to tend to the crops. The work was hard, and the results were not immediate, but slowly, the farm began to show signs of life. Weeks passed, and Musa's farm began to flourish in ways it hadn't before. The soil seemed richer, and the crops grew strong under the family's careful hands. The twins, once so rebellious and mischievous, started to take pride in their work. Ada, too, changed. She no longer spent her days wishing for a glamorous life or admiring herself in mirrors. Instead, she found joy in simple things, working beside her husband, watching their sons learn to take responsibility, and seeing their farm slowly prosper. Musa was no longer the poor farmer who couldn't provide for his family. He was now seen as a man of great strength and perseverance, someone who had turned his life around through sheer determination. One afternoon, as she and Musa sat together on the porch, watching the twins run through the fields, Ada turned to her husband with a smile. "I don't need wishes anymore, Musa," she said. "I have everything I need right here." Musa nodded, his heart full of gratitude. They had learned the hard way that there were no shortcuts to happiness. But now, through their own efforts, they had found something far more valuable than wishes. "Hey guys, what will you do if someone offers you the 7 wishes?" What do you think? The desire for beauty in women is right or not? Share your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories.